Hey Guardian, do you like explosions? How about explosions that trigger more explosions? Would you like to never die and deal massive damage at the same time? The Caliban's Hand exotic had a rough start in Season 17, and when it finally was fixed, or straight up changed, depending on who you ask, it was too late for most players to even want to try. But I'll be showcasing the absolute destruction this build can bring, along with how tanky it is. If you end up liking this build video, I'd greatly appreciate a sub. For now though, let's get to this Pyromaniac build. So, obviously, we're playing a Solar Hunter today. For your super, Blade Barrage is the easiest to use, but once the Season 19 nerf hits it, you can think about using Marksman Golden Gun if that's what you're into. This build is heavily melee focused, which leads us to pick Gambler's Dodge. If you play the build perfectly, then you don't need this, but let's be honest, you won't be playing it perfect. Use whatever jump you want, but normal people use triple jump. The proximity explosive knife is mandatory. It's kind of the whole point of our exotic choice. We'll be using healing grenades. This makes us extremely tanky, and you won't miss using grenades because our knives are basically tactical nukes. The knock 'em down aspect is mandatory. It allows us to have infinite throwing knives as long as we secure a kill. I suggest On Your Mark as your second aspect, just because of the extra fragments it allows you to have. If you feel like using Gunpowder Gamble, be my guest. But don't come crying in the comments when you accidentally throw a GPG grenade at your feet instead of a healing grenade. P.S. I've never done that. So I'll be assuming you're using the suggested aspects, which gives us 5 fragment slots. Imperium is too good to pass up, even with the resilience penalty. This lets you carry restoration with you for a very long time. Torches is mandatory in order to make sure Knock 'em Down works properly and refunds our throwing knife every kill. Blistering is extremely good for keeping your grenade off cooldown. There are going to be times where you get 50% of your grenade back from one throwing knife. Solace is great to keep your buffs up longer, which gives you more room to breathe instead of having to rush kill after kill to keep Imperium proccing. Lastly, Eruption will make your ignition stupidly massive. You'll be able to kill things so far away from your main target that it's ridiculous. In case you haven't caught on by now, the exotic we'll be using is Caliban's Hand. This makes our proximity knife final blows cause ignitions. The way this affects your gameplay is really interesting. It asks you to kill the weaker targets, and your reward is that it kills all the nearby large targets. Aiming for the head will make this more consistent as you'll be dealing more damage. It can take some time to learn what enemies you can kill with just an explosion, with a direct body hit, or with a headshot. But generally, it's best to at least aim for their body. Weapons are preference and content based, but you'll be seeing me use Night Watch in the background as I enjoy the lightweight bonus. Snorri because it's just a good solid special weapon, and Lament because it's the most consistent dungeon slayer, which also happens to be solar, which means easy damage boosts from mods for us. Speaking of mods, for combat mods, throw on Melee Wellmaker. This will generate tons of wells as you melee most adds. With this, we'll be using Fontamite and 2 Well of Life mods. Throwing in Elemental Time Dilation will extend our duration for both mods, which makes it even easier to maintain our buff uptime. Fontamite will stack with our Radiant buff that we receive from our charged melee attacks. For the slot specific mods, with the helmet, prioritize your scavenger mods, but if you can fit hands on, it works great in this build. On your arms, Impact Induction will give you the most bang for your buck by giving you grenade energy for melee hits. Chest, just use resistance mods. There's nothing else of value here. Legs, just use scavengers. And since we need at least 1 stasis armor, we'll make our class item do that, and we'll have access to Utility Kickstart, which is a pretty solid mod and extremely cheap. When picking your armor pieces or using extra mod energy on stats, focus on resilience. That's currently the most valuable stat in the game, regardless of what you're playing. After that, you can spread your stats evenly between mobility, discipline, and strength. But as you get better at running this build, you can focus just on discipline, since you won't actually need mobility or strength if you're playing optimally. Recovery is unnecessary if you're running healing grenades, which I recommend, and intellect is just a dead stat, so don't spec on that on purpose. So when piloting this build, what's going on? Well, when killing adds, throw a healing grenades at yourself first if you have one, then throwing knife the weakest target in the group. This will grant you super energy, grenade energy, and radiant. assuming you secure the kill, it also refreshes your knife, extends your restoration, drops the solar well, causes an explosion. Then, if that explosion kills more enemies, you'll be granted even more grenade energy. Pick up the solar well, yet again more grenade energy. This well also procs Fontamite for a damage buff that will stack with Radiant, and healing from Well of Life, which stacks with Restoration. This makes you deadlier and tankier all at the same time. This is what helps us against bosses when you use a solar weapon. Secure a kill on a weak ad before or during a DPS phase to buff your damage massively, and allowing you to easily one-phase bosses like the Phalanx in Prophecy, or two-phase Galron safely. Don't forget, you have Blade Barrage as well, which does a huge chunk of burst damage. Overall, this build is a blast, literally. There's not really anything as satisfying as causing back-to-back ignitions with a throwing knife. Mr. Torg would be proud of any hunter that runs this build. Not to mention the survivability of solar subclasses are unmatched. If you'd like to see another solar subclass build that is virtually unkillable, you can click the video on screen now to see a Titan build that can solo Master Duality and make it look easy. If not, then I'd like to thank you for your time. Until next time, see you out there.